Excited to welcome my friend Jonathan Malm today. He's the author of a book called Unwelcome. He told me that this book was born out of a really bad experience that he had at church. He said it made him want to stand up and walk out the doors. And so he wants to make sure that other churches, other people in other churches don't have similar experiences. Jonathan has been married for 5 years, is from San Antonio, Texas, but was a missionary kid, so traveled all over the place and came to San Antonio, Texas via Guatemala. So Jonathan would tell you that it's his passion to help people think creatively about their lives. So Jonathan's going to be talking to us about how to motivate church members, and I'm excited to welcome Jonathan Malm to the stage.
Woo! Applause. Yeah, well, I wanted to tell a story. I got an undergraduate degree in college, but it wasn't ministerial based. It was actually a marketing degree. And I'd like to think I excelled at the course, but I really kind of did the minimum that was required to get an A. And there was one class in particular. Actually, I think one class I didn't even go to the final because I figured out I could get an A without taking the final. And I think I actually got a B in that class anyways. But normally I did the bare minimum, which is probably not something I want to admit to. This one class in particular, they had us do chapter summaries every week over a chapter of the book. And I got the idea that the professor was probably not actually reading these summaries. So I started just kind of like burying little, do you even read this in there? And I still got full marks. Then I got a bit braver the next time, and I started 2 sentences about the chapter, and then I told a story about a duck that we had that drowned, and still got full marks. So by the end of the semester, I was just writing full stories or just copying the same sentence over and over, all work and no play makes Jonathan a dull boy. It was ridiculous. But one thing that did actually stick that I learned from that class was this management theory called Hertzberg's two-factor theory. Now, this is a management theory. It's about getting employees motivated. And I know that doesn't seem like it has much to do with church, but follow me here, it does. It's kind of my own little Jonathan Malm spin on the Hertzberg two-factor theory. But the two-factor theory basically is the idea that some things, if they aren't there, will make an employee demotivated. So, as an employee, if I'm not getting paid enough, I'm going to be demotivated, right? If the pay is not good enough, I'll be demotivated. But that thing will not become a motivator. You can't pay me more and I won't get motivated. They found that actually more pay does not make employees more motivated. So then there's other things that are called motivators that actually get people motivated in the job. And those are things like responsibility, having more responsibility matter. That'll make someone actually feel more motivated to do the job. But the thing is, you have to know that if the pay is not there, even if the responsibility is there, they'll still be demotivated. Now, you followed me here. It's complicated. But let me show how this applies to churches. So I really see churches as the people who are attending church are kind of like your employees. They're the ones who are really kind of creating your product. Your product is people. Your product is stories, change lives. They're really your employees helping you do that. They're inviting their friends. They're letting the community know about what your church is. They're like your front line. And getting them motivated is not necessarily easy. There are some things that I believe will keep your congregation demotivated, that'll make them kind of not feel satisfied with your church. But then there are other things that, if they're there, along with those things, will make them motivated and ready to reach out to their people. So I just kind of wanted to go through a list of some of these things. The first things would be demotivators, the things that, man, if they're not there, people are going to be demotivated at your church. So I think it's important to take care of those first before we get into the motivators. And follow me here. So the first thing, that would be a hygiene factor. That's kind of the term that Hertzberg uses, a hygiene factor that needs to be there to keep people from being dissatisfied, is quality of ministry. That's, either for personal, so if I'm a parent, if you're not giving me quality of ministry, that'll demotivate me. If you're not getting my kids quality ministry, that'll demotivate me. My youth, you're following there. So that'll be a quality of ministry. If you're not speaking to me directly, if you're not meeting the needs that I feel like I have, I'm going to be demotivated. And it doesn't matter how much you meet my needs, it's probably not going to motivate me. That's kind of like an expected thing that needs to be there. Another thing would be logistics. So if I can't find a parking spot, I will not be motivated. I will not be satisfied at the church if I can't find a place to sit. If I drop my kids off at a kids program and the room's overcrowded, that's totally a demotivator. And yeah, fixing those things will make me, okay, now we're at a baseline, but it'll never make me motivated per se. The next thing is visibility. I think this is an issue. And obviously, this is different for different people. This is kind of an overall, overarching concept. Just like in management, one person might be an exception to the rule. But visibility is one of those. Man, if people come into your church and they feel invisible, not necessarily that they're noticed from the platform, but if they feel like nobody notices them, like sitting next to them, or they're not making any connections, that's a feeling of invisibility. That'll make people dissatisfied. But now let's go on to the motivating factors. So our goal, of course, is to take care of those kind of three things first, which is the quality of ministry, logistics, and visibility. And then we can move on to the motivating factors. And the motivating factors, things that can get people really excited, get them involved, get them motivated to invite friends, and just be the front line of your church, would be a recognition in their role or place. So feeling like I have value, that'd be a lot of times getting people involved in ministry, involved in volunteering, feeling like I have a real value. And the problem is sometimes I volunteer as maybe a parking lot attendant, and I feel like I'm just parking cars. I don't really feel the value that I'm giving to people's lives. So our job as volunteer coordinators, as ministry leaders, is to show people, man, what you're doing is making people feel welcomed. It's actually impacting people's lives. And that's something that can give people real motivation. Next is life change. So there's quality of ministry, that's good, but unless my life is actually being changed, I won't be super motivated. And again, for a parent, that could be their life being changed. That could be their child's life being changed. Something that's really changing the way they approach their life. That'll get people really motivated. Then personalization. Feeling like a message is speaking to me. Feeling like God is speaking to me directly. That's something that will motivate people. And then finally, and this is kind of what obviously SALT is all about, but creativity is something that I believe can actually motivate people. It can get people excited about the church. And that's where we want to spend a lot of time, putting our efforts into creativity, putting our efforts into a great worship set, into great graphic design. And I think our tendency, though, when we're kind of involved in this creative church atmosphere, is sometimes we neglect the things, the demotivators, the things, the hygiene factors that will get people, like, okay, I'm satisfied here. And we focus on creativity when we're missing out on these other things. So my encouragement for you today is to focus, make sure that you get these quality, these hygiene factors, all these things kind of in place, and then start working on the motivators. I think a lot of people focus on the motivators and not the hygiene, and that's a disservice you do to your church. So I would just like to leave you with that. Imagine what you could do for your church if you start taking care of that and then start getting people motivated. Man, I believe there are people in your church that if they're just motivated, they'll be their strongest ambassadors. They'll invite their friends. They'll reach out to people. And can you imagine churches in our communities that were like this, that had motivated congregants, that were actually like reaching out to their friends? I believe the church would be unstoppable. And I think this is just one tangible way we can make that happen. So there we go.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, I'm going to wait for my mic to come back on.
Yeah, I'm
awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. You were talking a lot about how people can feel motivated. Can you share one specific story of maybe a time you've seen a volunteer coordinator or a pastor say something or do something specifically that just made someone feel very motivated to stay at church and be involved in a church?
Yeah, I think the perfect example is a parking lot attendee. Man, I see so many parking lot attendees at some churches that are like, just kind of boring, waving people into their spot. It's hot outside. They're not feeling comfortable. They're just doing their job because it's just a task that they're supposed to do, and they feel like, okay, I'm needed. If I don't show up, no one's going to do it, and I feel demotivated. But then I've been to other churches, man, where the parking lot attendees are like doing little dances outside, and they're just stoked about what they're doing because they see the value of it.
Yeah.
And man, those are the people who invite their friends. Hey, come to my church. I'll help you park. Like, it's crazy, but they'll actually tell people, hey, I have a really fundamental role at my church, and I'd love you to come and experience my church with me. I'll park you, and then I'll sit next to you. So it's kind of cool.
Wow, I think what you just said, I have a fundamental role at my church. That mindset is so much different than I'm a parking lot attendant and I do it some Sunday. So that's incredible. Well, Jonathan, thanks so much. If people want to get a hold of your book, Unwelcome, how can they get a copy of that?
Yeah, Unwelcome is on Amazon. And then Created for More, another devotional, is actually at the bookstore down here, and that's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all sorts of different ebook places too. So
awesome. Well, Jonathan, thanks so much for sharing with us.